Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Podcast 18. As always, I'm Sean, John, or Yahya, depending on what you're asking.
I'm Chris.
It's lovely to have you. Thank you to everybody of the near 360 subscribers we've got. It has quite jumped quite a bit over the last month. Beginning of the month, we were about 313. We're doing very, very well. We're very pleased to have you all. Thank you very much. I'm going to get into a little bit of the intro, shall we? But relatively speaking, as always, this is your voice, your podcast. We like to speak as bluntly as we can. We don't hold any political correctness on here, and we aren't afraid to tear strips into political parties and opposites. For me today, I've got Russia could start a major war in Europe within 5 years. Danish intelligence warns. I've got my thoughts on that. Genuinely thinking I don't agree. I don't think Russia wants a war with Europe, even without America. China has warned it will hit back on countries that make deals with the US that hurt Beijing. That's a financial hit back, because China doesn't do foreign kind of conflicts. I mean, in her entire existence, she's only been involved in internal affairs. Why are we pandering to the far right as the UK political spectrum is discussing about labelling migrants' actual ethnicities of those that are foreign criminals? It will allow people to target people. I completely disagree with that. There's no consensuation. Expel the fucking criminals, keep the innocent people, don't harm people. And lastly, there is a Tory push today that wants to stop recording of non-crimed hate incidences, and that's the cover for the far left being able to basically say whatever the hell they please. On Chris's side, we have...
Right, today, obviously, big news, obviously, regarding Pope Francis is passing away, so we'll have a little discussion about that. Obviously, a follow-up from the last one regarding, obviously, the ruling of the Supreme Court. Keir Starmer finally makes a statement on it. We should be reviewing that. And obviously, on how that will affect. And obviously, the UK economy would be the hardest to be hit by the global trade war, and their thoughts upon that.
Yeah.
Even though the fact that we won't really necessarily do much in dealings, but doesn't mean it won't affect us.
We are an open market. Yeah. That's the problem, and open markets get fucked when two great powers decide to collide and you're not one of them. That's the critical point. I mean, this is one of the reasons why China's hitting back as it is. But yeah, no. Start with you, Chris.
Let's start with the Pope Francis. Obviously, Pope Francis died on, I forgot the date now.
21st, I think
21st, it was. 21st of April.
So there's a couple of days from the recording.
Yeah, a couple of days, yeah. Obviously sad news from the religious point of view. Obviously, he was
2 billion Catholics worldwide.
Yeah.
Was it 1 billion? 1 billion, 2 billion, something like that.
Between 1 and 2, yeah.
I think it's more than 2.
Obviously, his funeral is set to be on the Saturday. Obviously, people have mixed opinions on this, obviously due to their religious background and their views upon the church. Because obviously there'd be wide speculation.
As a Muslim, I think he was a good man. Yeah. I think he was a good man who tried to do good.
From everything I've ever seen of him, or he's tried to do, he's always been one of a humble nature to try to balance the books, as I call it.
He's tried to fix both the church and remain close to the public and the poor, because he was called the poor Pope, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He always travelled light. He didn't like using limousines and stuff like that. I've got a great deal of respect for what he did in his life.
He dealt with a lot of internal affairs as well, didn't he? So.
He tried to. A lot of it he did try to. He didn't succeed in some parts. There were a lot of people that have got a lot of criticism for it, but relatively speaking, I genuinely think he did really well for a lifetime of a man who is relatively a church servant. Mm-hmm. He's very popular in South America. The South American people love him very, very dearly. He was very popular in both Argentina and Brazil. And I've got Brazilian friends, so I fundamentally know that it's going to be hurting a lot of Catholics around the world. So our condolences from our podcast to all the Catholics who watch, because it's not something you want to see. I've got no bad things I can say about Pope Francis.
That's actually a good positive thing, to be honest. No real backlash or anything else. Just the fact that it'd be. I
mean, there are people internally from the Catholic Church that believes he should have done more with the various problems that were going on in the Catholic Church. I'm not going to sit here and badmouth the Catholic Church today, because honestly,
the fact that he went to tackle them, he may not have solved them, but the fact that he tackled them,
he tried to actually deal with
previous ones.
That's definitely something that you've got to give the man respect for the kind of the peaceful job he was doing.
He set a decent standard bar for the next one to take over.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No. I mean, it's going to affect Christians all around the world, and it's going to have a bit of a knock-on effect. Every Christian out there is going to say something, they are, whether they're non-Catholics or Catholics. He's probably the most influential holy man in Christianity. I'm pretty sure I can safely say that. He's probably the top of the Christian pyramid, relatively speaking. But anyway, our condolences to all the Catholics, genuinely. Russia could start a major war in Europe in 5 years, Danish intelligence warns. If Moscow perceives NATO as weak, Russia could be ready to wage a large-scale war in Europe within 5 years, the Danish Defence Services has said. Russia is likely to be more willing to use military force in a regional war against one or more European NATO countries if it perceives NATO as military weakened or politically divided, stated the report, which was released Tuesday. This was Tuesday last week, I think. This is particularly true if Russia assesses that the US cannot or will not support the European NATO countries in a war with Russia. It continues emphasising that Russia is ramping up its military capacity to prepare for a possible war against NATO. I fundamentally disagree with this, because from what I know from Russian friends, and also from I can only go from the Russian chefing world, because I don't have experience in their military or anything like that, but the Russian people do not want a war with Germany, France, Britain. They just do not want one. And if it means they can't have Latvia and all of the Baltics because of that, that's fine. I think Russia will be spending most of its time trying to pacify and deal with Ukraine. It's a horrible thing to say. We shouldn't have been involved in Ukraine. We shouldn't have pushed this boat out. The promises made to Zelensky and his crew should never have been made, in my humble opinion. They're not NATO countries. There was no need for us to expand in that direction. All it does is provoke the tiger that is Russia unnecessarily. All the death that's gone on there is from the politicating and constant eastward expansion of NATO country power.
I don't know why we got involved anyway.
Because the CIA and that lot wanted us to include Ukraine. Let's be quite frank about it.
Because the fact they wanted a NATO base right on the border of bloody Russia.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Russia didn't like it.
Absolutely. So. Why would any power want a fucking NATO base on its border? Let's be fair. They've already got Latvia. Finland's now joined. Finland literally borders Russia. Now, Finland and Russia have a really old history. So, to be fair, the Russians wouldn't be that bothered about the Finns joining the opposition, since the Russians have actually lost. Russia has very rarely lost a war, but she lost a war against Finland because it has such a narrow land bridge that the Second World War, the Stalin era, couldn't invade Finland effectively against the small population that Finland had. And they
basically a tunnel effect.
Yeah, they murdered them. They had the White Death was a sniper, fucking unbelievable sniper. Even the Russians honour him in the fact that he killed shit tons of people and officers and other snipers and everything. Guy was an absolute machine. So yeah, I don't find that Russia wanting to invade NATO is credible. I think the Danish are pandering a little too much towards the fear-mongering.
I would say they'll deal with, now obviously they'll sort out Ukraine and then they'll probably leave it at that, because the fact
I think they're going to spend the next 10 to 15 years dealing with Ukraine.
Yeah.
And Europe is already rebuilt and militarising. In 10 to 15 years, Germany, France, Britain are going to be powerhouses militarily, because, let's face it, America's leaving. Anybody can see the writing on the wall. America is physically leaving.
America leaving, we're naturally going to boost up our
own domestic industries.
Which means that if they turn around and go, hang on, so one's left, but then everyone else that's currently there are now revamping and boosting up. They've currently got. They're not going to bother, because that's going from, I've only got to deal with one country. Oh, hang on, now I've got to deal with 3+.
It's not that. Poland is a military juggernaut already, and she's seriously prepared for this. Germany's remilitarising as we speak. For the first time since the Second World War, let's be quite honest about it. I do not believe Russia, on a conventional level, wants a conflict with the rest of Europe. I don't buy that. Because the Russians have nothing to realistically gain from it. They might, let's be hypothetical and say that America withdraws from NATO. Let's say that happens. Let's say America has a NIMBY moment. Fuck off, not my backyard, not interested. Germany, France, Britain and Poland have the military means now to stop Russia taking Latvia. Now, right now. In 10 years' time, the military difference is going to be vast. We have faster industries. Our industrial capacity isn't crumbling from corruption. Vladimir Putin can talk all he wants about how great the Russian military is. It's not. Anybody who knows this knows Russia is a paper tiger. You know, on the surface of things, like she's struggling against Ukraine. I'm not here to badmouth. The Russians are brave people, but they're struggling militarily against a country the size of Ukraine. They haven't captured more than 2 provinces. They're not this juggernaut they were during the Soviet era. In the Soviet era, Russia was a fucking beast. Let's not sugarcoat this in any way, shape, or form.
It was a dominant force.
Yeah, exactly.
Not so much.
It's not, because it's had decades and decades of mistreatment and corruption. The agency offers 3 scenarios that could occur if the Ukrainian conflict stops or becomes frozen, working with the assumption that Russia does not have the capacity to wage war with multiple countries at the same time. Within 6 months, the updated project, the Russians would be able to wage a local war with a bordering country, whilst within 2 years it could launch a regional war in the Baltic Sea region. In 5 years, meanwhile, it could launch a large-scale attack on Europe, providing the US does not get involved. The agency did not factor in any possible increase in NATO defence capacity. This is one of the things why I think the Danish report is in many ways fear-mongering. France, Germany and Britain are all spending more money, Italy, Spain included. The entire NATO pack of European countries are getting their shit together. 5 years, as this report is saying, is a long way away. 5 years...
We'll all build up a lot more defence.
There'd be a huge defence. Like, the Prime Minister's already spending billions and billions now. It's one of the few things he's actually relatively good at. Trump has urged NATO members to increase their defence spending to 5% of their GDP, more than double the current target, and has suggested the US could withdraw from the military alliance if its allies don't pay their own bills. I fundamentally think this is very controversial. Trump is good at forcing Europe to face its own wounds, because Europe's been fucking lazy about its defence for decades, absolute decades. Everybody who's been an armchair, including myself, an armchair observer, knows that Europe is pretty much militarily a lot weaker than it ever was. In the Second World War, we had 500,000 tanks between us.
Damn.
We don't even have 100,000 tanks in Europe right now, and that's including Germany, who was the enemy.
I just want to get the laser tanks up and running, and I don't care.
Them laser tanks are good, you know. They're good. You can't knock them.
Just 100,000 laser tanks, that's it.
Jesus Christ.
What a need for anything else.
I funnily find that the Russian security thinking demonstrates that Putin's stated views align with long-standing Russian fears about Western encroachment, giving Russia a lack of natural barriers to invasion. As Putin has come to view NATO as increasingly hostile to Russia. It is. It doesn't need to be. But it is increasingly hostile.
What's the way he's acting? Are you really surprised?
No, to be fair, I don't agree with what Putin's doing to the innocent people of Ukraine. Please don't take that as me supporting, me being a Russian as a sympathophile. But let me be very, very clear. It is understandable why the Russians are attacking the Ukrainians to stop them from joining NATO. It's 101. The smartest people out there will know full well why this is going on. It's not rocket science, for fuck's sake. The Russian people want to keep NATO off their border. I completely empathise with that. We shouldn't... I mean, I can understand Finland wanted to join out of fear, and that's a justifiable fear, considering even Russians will understand that from point of view. The Finns and Russians have had conflicts since the 1800s. So that's like.
I think it's partly because of the fact they'll find it difficult to take Finland.
Yeah, it's not just that. I think the Russians and the Finns, they kind of understand that they're going to be a natural opponents. But the Baltic states are fucked, absolutely fucked if NATO collapses. So I genuinely do urge the restoration of military ease. I believe that the CIA needs to be dragged off the border. Honestly, we're going to have to sacrifice Ukraine. I don't care what the rest of Europe says. It's not a NATO member. We don't have any obligation to it. I don't think we should be wasting money into that into a churning pit. I think that the Ukrainians were sold a dream that was never really achievable.
To be quite honest, I reckon if America didn't stick their frigging foot in...
America was the one who did all this. Joe fucking Biden and his groups.
Wouldn't have even come to this. If America didn't stick their nose in, there wouldn't be a war.
Remember, Zelensky was a comedian. Originally, he was a comedian. And out of nowhere, this motherfucker becomes the president of Ukraine, crying, we want to join NATO, we want to join Europe. Joining Europe was never a problem to Russia. Joining NATO is definitely a problem to Russia.
I say joining Europe, Russia's like, okay, no problem, you want to...
That's a trade pact, let's be fair. That's what Europe is, it's a trade union.
Russia's probably thinking, they just want to better themselves, that's fine, that's the issue.
But joining NATO means having fucking NATO, British and American boots on border, in bases, right on the border of Russia. I completely empathise why. I wouldn't want the fucking British American military on my border. And I'm British. I don't want the fuckers in Gloucestershire. Why the fuck would I, if I was a Russian, want them next door?
And we got a base in Gloucester.
3, I think.
Yeah. Don't knock on the door. We got 3 of them.
You know what I'm saying? I don't want them here. But I can understand, I can empathise with why the Russian people feel trapped and encroached. It's not unreasonable to think, especially with the alliance that has constantly spreaded east, decade after decade after decade. You can track the eastward expansion of Europe from the 1990s onwards.
Yeah, it's just gone east.
Yeah, and eventually you are going to come across Russia, and you're going to make Russia nervous. You could have made any kind of trade deal with Ukraine. You could have turned around and made Ukraine all the offers to join Europe without having to join NATO. You could have made promises to the Ukrainian previous political, because he was overthrown. The previous president was lawfully elected.
Yeah.
That's not said enough. The previous president of Ukraine was a lawfully elected president, overthrown by the Orange Revolution. Who paid for the Orange Revolution?
Probably America.
CIA. No, CIA.
CIA.
It's an open fucking secret, and it does. It irritates me when people seem to think that the Russians are doing this in an irrational position. They're not. Their response to what's going on with NATO and Ukraine is perfectly understandable. It's tragic what's going on with the Ukrainians. But when people use that as a comparison, what irritates me about the far left, and they use that as a comparison towards what's going on in Palestine, they are not even close, not even remotely. The Ukrainian death toll, I think, is around 300,000 or 400,000 in the last, and that's including soldiers, that's everything, in the last 5 years of the conflict.
Yeah.
The Palestinians have lost 40,000 women and children since last year.
Damn.
It's not, they're not even, and where Russia is only hitting certain things, most of the Ukrainian cities are standing. Most of the Ukrainian communities
they're being strategic in strong.
Oh yeah, they're attacking power stations. Yeah, they're making it difficult for the Ukrainians. They want to apply pressure. There's absolutely no, I'm not saying Russia's innocent. What I'm trying to get at is the Russians are incredibly restrained how they're behaving towards the Ukrainian brothers. Unlike the nation of It's Not Real, nor commonly called by the rest of the Western world as Israel, are fucking carpet bombing the Gazan people. They are not comparisons. So could the far left please stop comparing Gaza to the Ukraine? The Ukrainian is a strategic conflict between NATO, using Ukraine as a proxy, and the Russian people. And the Russian people don't want NATO on their border. That's completely understandable. I wouldn't fucking want NATO on our border. You've seen what these rapturous bastards do around the rest of the fucking world. Nightmarish stuff. Anyway, let's get on with one of yours.
Obviously, when I was researching it, Keir Starmer hadn't made obviously a statement on the latest judgment regarding the Supreme Court ruling.
Took a week, didn't he?
Yeah. It only just, I think today, he's made a statement.
Fucking Jesus.
Yeah. And it's as follows. A woman is a adult female, Sir Keir Starmer said, as he welcomed the Supreme Court's judgment on the issue. In the first public comments since the Justice decision on April 16th, Prime Minister said he is really pleased with the clarity of the court's ruling offers.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah. Sir Keir has previously said trans women are women. This is straight off the bat. Says one thing, contradicts himself in the friggin' next sentence.
This is Keir Starmer 101.
Yeah. Was asked to repeat the statement, but instead said, I think the Supreme Court has answered that question. Basically, by the sounds of it, he was on the trans side of the argument, and the Supreme Court has just kicked him in the arse and just gone, sorry, no. To be honest, I think this is a fair and, to be quite honest, long overdue kick up the butt to actually set things back in straight and order. Obviously, this is not an attack on trans people.
They're still protected.
Yeah, they're still protected
by the 9 characteristics.
Yeah, I was going to say, by the human rights thing, they are still protected. And that, they still got all that lot.
Legal rights, absolutely.
They've still got legal rights, but
the thing we're doing is defending women's private spaces. Women are biologically need private spaces. And you cannot, in my honest opinion, have a biological male entering women's space. And that's not me being transphobic, that's me trying to protect young women, vulnerable women. Yes, maybe the biological male thinks he's female and acts female and would not do predatorial things. But there is always that minute chance that there is one of them that will. And that is what society should guard against.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this is a good victory. I don't wish...
one to go on the side of actually correcting
common sense.
outlandish remarks some actually put out there.
Just
it is a simple case of this is that. Obviously, you're transitioning from one to the other. You still have your own rights, which protect you on those things.
Absolutely.
But you must understand the fact that there is basic biology in play.
Yeah.
Always will be. That will never go anywhere in distance. If you think that just because fact you go from a man to a woman, you are biologically a woman.
In language.
I'm sorry, you need to speak to someone and sort that out, because of the fact if you're born XY, XX.
That's not entirely. You do get. No. I want to defend this. There are trans. Intersex people. No, people who are born with both genders. Yeah, but they're they're called intersex.
Intersex, yeah.
But they're very, very rare. They make up less than 0.1% of the population.
There is always exceptions to the rule. Yeah, always is, always will be.
But relatively speaking, the biological sex is needed to be defined in British law because of how the online super left loony fucking side.
It's about the ones that literally just take things too far of enacting. They needed to be stopped.
This is a genuine and honest response that needed to be made, in my honest opinion. And I think it's a good thing. It's wonderful common sense. And the problem is the Prime Minister has dragged his fucking feet for 5 days. The ruling was back in...
That's disgusting, the fact that instead of just turning around going, I welcome the Supreme Court's decision, because obviously it was an issue that needed to be done.
He could have done that on day one.
And it's sorted. Obviously, naturally, there's going to be what's called learning curve with obviously all the new implementation they're putting in. But that's with anything. There's always a learning curve with everything. So, but it's just the fact that his response took far too long. To me, it shows a purpose of trying to undermine the Supreme Court's ruling, which is just disgusting because of the fact that it affects everything else in the process.
16th of April. So he's taken absolutely fucking ages on the equality.
He only done it, within the past 24 hours he's only made a statement?
Yeah.
So 16th of April, we're now on the 23rd, that's basically 5 days.
Yeah, he's taken far too long.
I don't give a crap if it was the Easter weekend.
Yeah, it's cool. You could have made a tweet about it.
Yeah.
Anybody back to my Easter holiday. I wouldn't have took him more than 5 minutes.
Could have easily turned around and made a statement on Saturday, since Saturday was just classed as a normal day.
Yeah, but it mind boggles me when it comes towards British politics and how it's so difficult to maintain to common sense.
Because he's a lawyer as well.
I know.
Which means he follows the court of rule.
I know. So, everyone keeps mentioning that he's a lawyer. I don't see it in his political career. I don't see it. You know? International Crimes Court calls for Israel's Prime Minister and multiple Israeli leaders to be held as criminals. 𝐾 is definitely fucking quiet. Definitely fucking quiet. You're a lawyer, mate. At one time, humanitarian lawyer. How is this not a fucking problem? But yeah, I fundamentally stand with Chris in this regard. It's a place for common sense. It's a place that the courts needed to clarify about what women's rights were in the Equality Act. This takes nothing away from adult trans people in any way.
You're still protected underneath every other, all the rights that are currently still in place, but that clear distinction was needed because it was getting out of hand.
And it protects vulnerable women.
It doesn't just protect women, it protects the trans people as well. If anything,
it allows them to start building their own space.
Yeah, it then sets a clear boundary, which I think is all important with everything, and it now gives you a path forward of what you can now turn around and do and achieve.
Absolutely.
Which, to me, it may have shut a door for some trans people, but to be honest, that door needed to be shut.
Yeah.
And it just opens up another one for you, which is more accepted across the entire world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, these are Western world problems. And I need to say it like that. These are Western world problems. The Middle East ain't worrying about trans problems. The Africa isn't worried about. Asia does not give a fuck about trans problems. She's too busy dealing with building their lives up. These are very much white Western problems.
Which are causing too much of a fucking headache.
Of course, absolutely. Anything else to add to that point or not?
No.
Fantastic. China has warned it will hit back at countries that make deals with the US that hurt Beijing.
What they determine by hurt Beijing?
This is interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting as trading wars between the world's two biggest economies threaten to drag in other nations. The comments come after reports that the US plans to pressure governments to restrict trade with China in exchange for exempts to US tariffs. That's what it's about. The Trump administration has started talks with trading partners over tariffs, with the Japanese delegation visiting Washington last week, and South Korea is set to start negotiations this week. Since returning to the White House in January, Trump has imposed hefty taxes on Chinese imports, whilst other countries have been also hit with levies of their goods. Appeasement cannot bring peace, and compromise cannot earn one's respect, a Chinese commercial minister spokesman said externally. China firmly opposes any party reaching a deal at the expense of China's interests. If this happens, China will never accept it and will resolutely take countermeasures. Now remember, China is, for her majority, a trading power. So this will hurt whoever decides to make a deal. America's economy isn't enough that you want to cut off the manufacturing centre of the world. That is what China is. China is the manufacturing centre of the human race.
I was going to say, literally, proof is just go around your home and just see what exactly is made in China. I could guarantee you at least 50% of your house.
Absolutely. So much of your cheapness. My laptop parts come from China. His laptop parts probably come from China.
Yeah.
Very little is not made in China or Asia these days.
If you're on 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐿's console, half of it's made in China. Regardless of what brand it is,
Absolutely.
half of it's made in China. Especially Nintendo.
If you put a number on it, about 20% of Japan's profitability comes from the US, and about 15% comes from the People's Republic of China, said 𝐬𝐮𝐫𝐿 from Japanese online trading platform operator Moxon Group. Certainly Japan does not want to have to choose between America or the People's Republic, because they do nearly 25% of their country's business between those two countries. South Korea's acting president, Han Dong-soo, has said his country will begin trade talks with the US later this week. Meanwhile, and that's scary, because South Korea has an enormous trade links running between them and China right now. So that could do a lot of damage to South Korea's economy. With a declining population, that's not healthy for the South Koreans.
What exactly do they get from US anyway? Because I'm sure they probably
military defence. Remember, North Korea's crazy. Yeah. Remember, North Korea's crazy. You know, Mr. Kim is practically worshipped by his people. I'm not shitting you there.
No, I know he is. I've seen the memes.
He is literally treated almost like a god. Remember, people fake cried over the death of his father. Millions of North Koreans were crying over it. So North Korea's crazy.
He's definitely one that's managed to get that size under his thumb.
He's got coal. But that's why South Korea needs America and they need China. They trade a hell of a lot with China, probably more than America. I don't know the full numbers of that. And they need America for defence. This acting president is in a fucking world of problems. Meanwhile, the US Vice President J.D. Vance is expecting to meet India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I can't stand Modi. I'm a Muslim, I can't stand him. What he's done to the Muslim community in India is disgusting. During a visit to the country this week, India faces a tariff rate of 26% if it is unable to agree to a trade deal with Trump's administration. India can become very combative with the West. I don't think India is going to bow to America's demands. And I think India will become another facet in this trade war. I think the Indians' pride
don't they supply quite a lot of spices and everything?
They supply half the world's rice.
Well, I'm sorry, America, but you're going to lose on that one.
They supply. I think it's half. It might be something as low as.
I know they do a substantial chunk.
Yeah, they feed a huge chunk of the planet.
Yeah.
They have the spices. Trade coming out of India is. This is why when Britain became an empire, it was the empire from India.
Yeah.
So India was always the jewel in the British Empire, and I think people need to remember that it wasn't America. America was nowhere near as developed as India was during the imperial period. But I got a funny feeling Modi won't like the way J.D. Vance negotiates and might tell him to fuck off. And I wouldn't be surprised if India doesn't flex itself that way. Because I know the Indian people, they don't like taking criticism from outsiders. And America has done nothing but criticise India time and time again.
Why?
Just for multiple reasons.
They're a decent supplier of the spices and rice and everything else.
Oh, I know.
Why? And seeing as supply quite a substantial amount of everything.
Yeah.
What's the point?
America and the West have turned into nagging uncles. You shouldn't do this while we're doing this.
You mean Kevin?
Yeah. Absolutely, Kevin. Kevin and Karen. That's the Western leaders. Don't do this. Don't be a hypocrite like us.
Oh, well,
that's naughty.
You turn into HOA now.
Literally, the West is like that. What pisses me off is that the West tells people not to act that way whilst doing it them fucking selves.
America's prone to having HOAs everywhere.
It fucking boggles my brain that, we preach liberalism. I am a liberalist. Let me be very, very clear about that. I believe in what liberal democracy stands for. Fundamentally, it's allowed me to have my religion, it's allowed me to have my voice, it allows me to give a middle finger to the British government, and I do, and I don't even reserve about that. But the problem is, I don't preach liberal democracy to other people. This is for me, my country, my people. Do you understand what I'm saying? We live in a liberal democracy. I don't believe I have a right to tell the Russians how to live, or even the Ukrainians, or fuck it, I don't even think I have a right to tell the Italians how to live their life. Because I think that's wrong. I think each individual tribe and nation should decide how it modifies it. So, I mean, in reality, I'm a fundamental believer in that liberty and democracy should be practiced by those who want to practice it. We shouldn't be preaching, because we're fucking hypocrites on a national level. Western society is absolutely fucking hypocritical. We should not be preaching to people like India, who've never really had a democracy because it's a tribal-led land. China doesn't have a democracy. Russia Russia claims it's a democracy. It's not. Let's be very fair about it. The Russian Federation is not a democracy. It's an oligarchy. Britain is a borderline oligarchy. We have a two-party system, but it's fucking broken as hell.
It doesn't work.
But telling the West telling people what to do while doing the things you shouldn't be doing is beyond barefaced fucking hypocrisism. Beyond barefaced. And I think the idea that you can tell... the Chinese are going to win this trade war. I genuinely do believe. I think it's inevitable that the Chinese are going to win because they produce more than half the world's fucking manufactured goods.
Well, naturally they're going to win. America's just trying to...
hold on to some kind of spending power that it doesn't have anymore.
Yeah, some kind of spending power, yeah.
Just hours after a steep levy on dozens of American trading partners kicked in earlier this month, he announced a 90-day pause on those tariffs to all countries bar China, in the face of mounting opposition from politicians and markets. Trump has imposed tariffs of up to 145% on imports from China. Other countries are now facing a blanket US tariff of 10% until July. His administration said last week that that when the new tariffs are added on the existing ones, the levies on some Chinese goods could reach as high as 245%. China was hit back with a 125% tax tariff on products from the US and vowed to fight to the end. This trade war between the world's two biggest economies sets a shockwaves throughout the global financial markets earlier this month. This is not going to end anytime soon. America's economical abilities are going to continue to dwindle. People are going to either become hunkered down, like I think Europe's probably going to approach, or what's going to happen is they're going to side with China. And I don't think he can win over India. I don't think the Indian people have got too much pride to be sucking up to a failing power.
They got too much of a solid footing to actually argue with.
Their markets do not massively impact towards America, I don't think. I don't think America really has a huge...
well, for one went over there, I saw a little bit of spice, but not compared to that we got. Yeah. And rice.
America doesn't eat that much rice, to be quite honest.
Yeah, they have a semi-decent section, but not quite like we got.
The Mexicans eat a lot of rice, and there's a large Hispanic population in America.
Yeah, but don't they grow their own rice?
I think that's the point. I think that's what I'm saying. Mexico exports its rice to America.
Yeah.
And this is one of the key factors. America grows a lot of its own materials as well.
Yeah.
I fundamentally think this trade war is fucking stupid. It's going to do more damage than good. And the world is going to rock back and forwards for some time, I suspect. The Chinese trade conflict with America saying that it'll drop tariffs for blocking China's goods is going to backfire. I don't think people understand how much of what is made in China is made in China.
A lot.
A fuckload of your goods are made there. And things are going to get expensive. And the people who have money, the poor people, are going to say to their politicians, You're making us poorer. No, fuck off. There will be riots. There will be protests. You can see it coming.
And your point leads into my next one. Very nicely. Asked the UK to be hit hardest by the trade war. This is come from Washington on this report. The Washington Place Organisation said that were a string of threats to the UK and global output, not least from the impact of the Trump administration involving trade war. This is just fucking disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Britain's economy will be among the hardest hit by the global trade war, and inflation is set to climb. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, has warned as it slashed its UK growth forecast by a third.
Let's be quite frank about this in Britain, yeah? This was entirely avoidable. We have done a self-wound. We would not be doing one of the worst hit countries in the world if we were still part of Europe. Okay, I know I hark on about this because we would have the European market to cushion the blow, because we would be part of a larger economical bloc. And yes, we would have another 10% tariffs, but fuck that matters. It really doesn't. It fundamentally does not matter. We are going to be economically poorer because we are outside the European single market. And this is the moment where Keir Starmer, lacking anything remotely in domestic policy, could win over his entire country for another election by rejoining the European Union and safeguarding us from this horrific mess.
Yeah. In a sobering set of projections, the Washington-based organisation said it was grappling with the extreme high levels of policy uncertainty, and the global economy would slow even if countries managed to negotiate a permanent reduction in tariffs from the US. Echoing earlier warnings about the risk of the global financial system, the IMF and stock markets could fall even more sharply than they did in the aftermath of the Trump's Liberation Day tariffs announcement, when the US and UK indices recorded some of the largest one-day falls since the pandemic.
Absolutely.
The fact that we could literally go back to pandemic level friggin' inflation and everything else,
absolutely,
is fucking disgusting.
It's inevitable in my opinion, because this trade war, as I said, there are some hard choices that our political leaders will not take. Kemi Bennock will never even negotiate the idea, but the woman, in my opinion, is politically a fish out of water. She's got about as much chance of changing British politics as a kick in a goo-goos. I genuinely do believe. And Keir Starmer, he needs to show real leadership now. He needs, in my opinion, to swallow the bullet, because once all this starts biting, every family in Britain is going to feel it. Absolutely. If you earn less than 70 grand a fucking year, you are financially going to
17, did you say?
70.
70.
Anybody under 70 grand will feel this. You don't understand how much
pay rise, and I'm still going to feel it. Fuck's sake.
I'm serious. The financial market is going to eat our arse, because we are a purchasing market. We are not. We develop very little of our own material. Since we buy from the open market worldwide, this is going to greatly affect Britain. And this is why, if you make less, I think it was less than 70 grand. Let me have a look at my notes. Anybody under 75,000. Anybody, any household, any household income, so that includes two parents, that's under 75 grand.
Oh, I currently live in a house of two other people.
Yeah, it's going to sting, Chris.
And I'm the main breadwinner.
That's going to sting. I make a little over 30, and I'm fucking shitting myself.
I make just under.
I make a little over 30, and I work fucking horrific hours, and I'm telling you this now, I am shitting myself.
I make just under 30, and I'm on 40 hours a week.
Mine can range anywhere from 39 to 45, depending on what I'm fucking doing. My shifts rotate around like any kind of thing, but I'm just a very little over 30, and I'm telling you, I'm bricking it. Britain, I'm bricking it, because I know we are a purchasing market. We do not. This is why I've said in multiple podcasts, we need to redevelop our farm.
Everyone's going to be wanting to turn their garden into a freaking little veg patch.
Absolutely, you're going to have to. You're going to have to seriously look at making ways to cut your food bills, because everything is going to skyrocket. You are a purchasing nation. More than 50% of your food comes from outside the country. More than 70% of your manufactured goods come from outside the country.
I say, and I'll see it comes
cars. We don't build anywhere near as many cars as we used to.
No. It's because half of them have been taken out, I swear, aren't they?
Yeah, because it's cheaper to do so.
Got bought out by other companies and then
cheaper to do so.
Elsewhere.
I'm telling you this now, Britain, you need to start. If I've got some advice to the British people who are worried about this, who are listening to this, stockpile tins, cans, tin pies, tins of anything really, and just, because they last 6-8 months, have an emergency stockpile of tins. If you can, get that. Put it away, don't look at it, don't treat it like your basic shopping, and when you know you've got no way of paying for your food, you've got an emergency stash sat there. And that's the best advice I can give anyone who watches these podcasts, is because fundamentally it is a terrifying position to be in if your household is under 75 grand.
Oh, so I'm a fresh food eater as well.
I know, so am I. You'd be surprised how much of our fruit and veg comes from Europe. And that's why leaving the European market was fucking mad. Madness.
Actually, just to add a thing, and obviously it comes to the fact that the Chancellor Rachel Reeves prepares to meet with the US counterpart Scott Bessent at the IMF's spring gathering in Washington this week.
Useless. Why are we pandering to the US that has very little food intake or supply intake to the UK? The US affects the British financial market, not as much as the British industrial market or the food market. We have very little interest in America's trade when it comes towards... Our pharmaceuticals go over there, admittedly. We'll lose our high-yielding pharmaceutical industry, but I don't think that's a massive loss.
Not pharmaceutical industry.
I think we should shift to Europe, because it's right fucking next door and we make most of our trade there. So we should go all in. We didn't start this trade war. Fuck the Americans at this point. They wanted to elect this lunatic. We should get off this fucking boat now. I said what I said.
We need to do what's best for us. I don't give a shit
Absolutely.
about America.
And the best for us would be to return to Europe. Financially, economically, defence-wise. As a trading bloc.
Well, since we seem to be, obviously, keep doing everything else with Europe since we come out.
Yeah.
Just comes with the extra fucking price tag.
I say go back. The point of leaving Europe was a mistake. Horrible, horrible mistake. Why are we pandering to the far right of the UK's political spectrum from the UK apparent Labour Party is insane. Where is the centre of the UK these days? Migrant charities and MPs have accused 𝐬𝐝_𝐾𝐭 of pandering to racists and stoking the possibility of riots after the Home Office said it would publish the nationality of foreign criminals in the UK for the first time. The bulk of criminals around the entire UK make up less than 1% of all of the ethnic and non-ethnic minorities. Why are we publishing this to endanger the ethnicities of these countries? Answer: everyone's pandering to fucking Nigel bastard Farage. That cunt has been in my county just recently, down at a fucking goddamn brewery. Fuck him. Fuck him, fuck everyone who wants to support him. If you're from Gloucestershire, fuck you if you support Nigel Farage. I said what I said, okay? Because that man is a nasty fucking racist.
Why didn't you tell me he was done? I would have loved to go down and have a conversation with him.
I know, I'd smack the cunt in the face.
Yeah, I would have pushed you away. I want to have a conversation with the twat, not nut him.
just nasty human being. It's not him himself, it's the fuckers who follow him. And I've said this more and more times, and he needs to be knocked off his pedestal, he really does. He's not some kind of fucking goddamn Nigel Farage or save the white man. He isn't saving shit. He ain't gonna save a fucking cold. The man has no plan to deal with migration. The man has no plan to deal with the actual trade deficit. If his nose is so far up Donald Trump and he gets rid of the Donald Trump tariffs, Europe will resent that. They are our bigger trading partner. I don't understand how the rest of Gloucestershire could want this lunatic as anything in our county. It boggles my brain. The Home Secretary has ordered officers to publish the data, including crimes that have been committed. By the end of the year, it is expected to lead into a leagues table of foreign nationals showing where nationalities are more associated with particular crimes. The move comes as Labour attempts to quell the threat from Nigel Farage's Reform Party at the next week's local elections. This is insane. Where the fuck is the centre of our country? Why are we drifting constantly far and far right? It's mad. It's fucking mad. I'm not even a leftist. Chris will tell you that. I'm not a leftist. I can't stand the fucking woke.
I'm going to say neither of us are leftists.
I'm an arch centralist. I really am.
Balance is the
absolutely.
key.
Give people the rights to live their lives. Mind your own business. Minimal amount of government. That's the type of Liberal Democrat I am.
The only thing I would say to that is obviously they plan on posting obviously the criminal the things lots of
League,
words.
league,
Yeah,
li-
the league. Yeah, obviously
League of Nationalities.
League of Nationalities and what their criminal record was. My first question straight off is: was those crimes committed here, or were they committed in the country they originated from? That is my first question.
Okay.
Yeah, because in fact, if they were committed in the country they come from, why the fuck they here?
That's a valid. And again,
Yeah.
and I've got no grievances with people who want to say that.
Yeah,
I've
because
got no problem with that.
that is a very valid question. Because if you know they're a criminal coming into the border, yeah,
Why the fuck were they let in?
Why the fuck are they let in? You're just promoting issues.
Well, I completely agree with Chris on that.
That's
no, not even an issue.
Yeah.
I don't want, for me, send all the criminals out the door and let's take in Palestinians and Ukrainians and other refugees who want a peaceful life and not have bombs dropped on them.
Because that's the first and most important question that needs to be asked. Were they done inside the UK, or were they done outside the UK, the crimes they committed? If it's outside, why the fuck are they in here? If they're in, time for us to kick our asses into gear and sort it the fuck
Absolutely.
out. Yeah? Why are we posting shit? Are you trying to promote vigilantism and have the problem solved for you by the public?
It's fucking madness. Absolute fucking
The only
madness.
thing you're doing is promoting more crime.
Yeah, absolutely. �\phys_Quercus, the chief executive of Migrant Rights Network, said publishing foreign national offenders' national list will blatantly exercise in scapegoatism. Absolutely, it always does. Every time it's a scapegoat.
They're passing a fucking buck.
Of course they are.
That's what it seems like to me. I really don't want to deal with the problem. Hang on, we'll post it and let the public deal with it.
Attempts to manufacturing a link between nationalists and criminals only serves to deepen prejudice and discriminations towards migrants from certain countries. Linking the nationalities, ethnicities and immigration status with crimes is nothing more than a dog whistle politic. It is! It's disgusting, and it's coming from a Labour government. Britain, stop voting fucking these two parties. They're both fucking useless.
Lib Dem, next government, all the way. Let's see
Please,
what happens.
absolutely.
Let's see what fucking happens.
They'll at least
Can't get any fucking worse, can it?
They'll take you back to fucking Europe at least. They'll solve your market problems. They'll be humane about how they treat human beings. A'udhu billah, my fucking head hurts sometimes. I can't believe 𝐬𝐝_𝐾. I can't believe 𝐾𝐨𝐧'𝐭 considered dog whistling to Nigel Farage. Why are people dog whistling? And it comes on to my next point. The Tory leader wants to ban non-violent hate crimes. Basically, let's do something controversial, yeah? You call me an Irish fucking travelling cunt, yeah? That's a hate crime. You're not going to, but you know what I'm saying? You say that to me, that's a what is it? What was the word that she says? Ban recorded non-crime hate incidences. I think that's fucking absurd. Absolutely absurd. Because again, it panders to the far right. It absolutely panders
That's
to
just
them.
basically his permission to
verbally
abuse people
Exactly.
of different.
It's like me calling you a four-eyed short cunt. I do that anyway, but that's in person.
I'll tell you to stick your head up your own
Exactly, you know.
cunt.
But we're like that. We know we can be like that with each other. The recording of non-crime incidences by police forces in England and Wales should be scrapped in all but a few cases, the Conservative Party leader has said. This is again to pander to the online fucking hate speeches. There is nothing to be gained from banning this except another dog whistling. Both sides of our country, the left and let's be fair, the Labour Party under 𝐾𝐨𝐧'𝐭 is not left. Both the Labour Party and the Tory Party are drifting right wing every fucking day. The Conservatives leader 𝐶𝐨_𝐬𝐿 said non-crime hate incidences, NCHIS, had wasted police time chasing ideology and grievances instead of justice. I agree with that statement. Yeah, I agree with that statement. But Police Minister Diane Johannes said that the plan was unworkable and would prevent the police monitoring serious anti-Semitism and other racist incidents. It's designed to stop people building platforms that then lead them to hate individual fucking groups based upon skin colour or one of the 9 protected characteristics. That's why those laws exist. They're to protect the vulnerable.
It's to prevent future harm of everything.
Yeah.
Basically, as I call it, it's to prevent chaos.
Yes, absolutely. You nip it in the butt early, as Chris is quite fond of saying,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't become a problem.
Solve it at the start instead of at the end. No issue.
Reform UK spokesperson said that the Tories had 14 years in government to do this. Instead, we saw non-crime hate incidences surge under their watch. The reality is the Tory party leader is saying this because we are running up towards a national council election. And apparently Nigel Farage, for whatever fucking insanity, is apparently doing well. And I am absolutely batshit crazy about how the fuck this man, who has no plan, has abandoned 2 other entire parties.
I say he keeps jumping.
The man jumps ship whenever something goes wrong. Again and again and again.
As we've said before, he spikes the problem with no solution.
And fucks off out the door. Like the man has no concrete ability to solve any of these problems.
He's becoming the version of chaos.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
I was going to say, he's becoming the spokesperson for chaos. He really is, isn't he?
He's an anarchist. He really does. He doesn't care about the British system. He only cares about his personal image and power. And it does deeply worry me, Britain, because we have this demigorgon who wants to be the Donald Trump when we don't have anywhere near America's assets to be able to alienate the rest of the world.
And even then, I'd still say, don't bother. You're going to need the people for trade.
Yeah.
And everything else.
He's mad. He's mad as a marsh fucking air. Because what he wants to achieve, he wants to go back to a 1960s Britain. We can't. We don't have the birth rate to do that.
I swear in
1960s
Britain, even when it was in that thing, still struggled.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Let's put that in perspective. 1960s Britain, that he wants, struggled. We only started to gain momentum and actually started to gain stabilisation when
the Windrush happened. When we started bringing in British Pakistanis, when we brought in the British Jamaicans, and they started to help rebuild our country in the 70s and 80s.
So other people that are liking the British way of living, classified as part of the British nation, come in. So technically, they're an immigrant. They're not pure British, is what Nigel Farage would say.
Just fucking does my Sweden.
Dick that notion up your ass, because technically, none of us are poor British, you twat.
I'm apparently, I rarely say it, I am apparently, by my grandfather's assessment, and I don't buy this, I'm apparently a 13th generation Irishman. I don't believe that. I think my grandfather was probably exasperating these situations. But the idea that these legends span out as they're told and spun generation after generation after generation is something that leads us to the idea that there's a pure white Britain. Britain has been a migrating nation for absolutely millennia. French, German, Celts don't even originate. Not even just the Romans. But after the Romans, we had the Viking invasions. We had the trade agreements with France and Portugal. We've had French kings. Britain has been a migrant nation for thousands of years. There are no indigenous people to these islands. These are a migrant nation, and I'm tired of people saying this. Because it's bollocks.
If you're able to turn around and trace your family heritage back to before the Romans and find that,
you can't.
In Nigel Farage's thing of a pure Britain, you would be a dime in a fucking dozen.
No, Chris, it's impossible. I'm absolutely certain that you. You know what?
Hang on. Let's put this into perspective. Yeah, you'd be a fucking mermaid. Yeah, I don't fucking exist. And watch me get contemplated now and stuck up the ass, and mermaids get proved next week.
There is not a single remaining unique Celtic group in the UK, as populations have mixed and changed over the last 2,000 years. The Celtic language still operates. We're talking about raw ancient Britons here.
Yeah,
they are the Celts. We're talking of the Iceni and the Valacerius and all the other Celtic Bronze Age societies. You have to go back to the Bronze Age to even remotely come to something what is an illusion of, and even they traded. They married multiple people from the Middle East and from the trading partners of Africa, brought wives and husbands back in the merchant ships. Britain wasn't this white nation everyone makes it out to be.
Never was.
It is a mixed country that has been mixed for centuries, millennia even.
I don't think there's name a country in the entire world that is.
Yeah, no, I can actually. Until about 2000,
yeah,
Egypt had around 25 to 30% still maintaining of its ancient bloodlines, going back all the way to the Egyptian periods. That is starting to dilute now, even now. Egypt was an example.
But think how big Egypt is compared to us.
In a Mongolia of China, they had similarity. And even then, they're only between 20 to 30% of those particular regions in both Egypt and in China. And of course, we have some African tribes that do the same.
I guess just think of the size of those countries compared to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah? Think of the size of the country they needed to be in order to keep just 20 to 25%.
And I'm pretty sure that the Egyptian population's DNA purity index, I think is what it's called, has devolved even since the 2000s. We've had 20 years on from that, so I think it's about... And Inner Mongolia, again, and I think Mongolia itself, there are very few what you call ethno-tribes left on this earth. The Japanese have huge amounts of Korean and Chinese in them.
Where's that one island where if the foreigner steps onto it, they kill you immediately?
We're talking developed nations here, Chris. We're not talking about actual savages, because that's literally what they are.
I was going to say, I think that's probably the only way you're going to get pure blood.
Absolutely. Pure-blooded humans is them.
Is them. That's the closest you're going to get.
Probably some of the people in the Amazonian jungles as well.
Yeah.
The tree hopping people with literal fucking spears.
As I call in the more remote places within the world, is probably the only way closest going to get to a pure.
Sections of Nepal in the mountains. Sections of Tibet. Sections of Inner Mongolia in China. I was told that they still have an ethno group that's close to the Mongolians and close to the Chinese, but unique amongst themselves. Mongolians themselves, Siberian Russians have an ethno capacity as well. The idea that the white man is some kind of pure race is bollocks. It's absolutely... We've borrowed DNA from fucking everybody. 5% of the human race is Genghis Khan in him, for fuck's sake. I'm serious.
I seriously need to do this DNA.
Seriously.
Because I want to know what the fuck's in me.
Charlemagne was half French, German, had Italian blood in him. There's 3 European tribes in itself, and half of Europe's dudes have Charlemagne in them because of how many sons he had and how far he go back. There are British kings in mine and Chris's bloodline. I guarantee it, because I've got a couple of English ancestors, because I'm Belfastian Irish, not Republican Irish. So I can guarantee you go back far enough, you will find your family lines traced across multiple fucking generations upon multiple tribes. There are, at this point on Earth, very few pure tribes. They are going to be the remotest regions of some of the massive countries of the world that just haven't developed and haven't integrated enough.
That's a cool word, the modern technology and where life has reached.
The idea of pure ethno-tribes is a myth. It's an absolute myth. And it's a myth that scares me because it's one that can cause wars. It can disrupt and destroy society.
Wasn't that the part of World War II?
No, World War II. The nutty fucking moustache man.
He started World War I. I thought Hitler was part of that.
No, Hitler was a corporal in World War I. And because they lost World War I, he got really, really radicalised. And the Versailles treatment was monstrous to the Germans. I'm going to be very, very defensive here on the historical point of view. The Versailles Treaty against Germany was horrible. Everybody admits that in modern society. It was absolutely monstrous. It mistreated the Germans and the Austrians and the losers of the First World War, the Central Powers, if you like. And the Ottoman Empire collapsed because they were part of the Central Power. They lost so much of their land and assets, and etc. And that's what gave birth to Israel, the state. That's a whole other topic for another fucking day. But the First World War... The reason the Second World War happened is because we allowed a treaty like Versailles to absolutely fucking destroy Germany. That then led to the radicalisation. And I suspect this trade war could lead towards radicalists across Europe seizing it. I mean, we've already got the Italian Prime Minister is probably about the most right-wing Prime Minister Italy's ever had. We've got Nigel Farage banging on our fucking door. We've got Le Pen's people. Le Pen had to be manoeuvred out of politics in the French fucking Republic. Literally, the right wing are banging on everyone's fucking door. It's madness. Absolute madness. Britain, don't swallow this.
Stay neutral, because if we don't stay neutral, it's just going to cause so much trouble.
It's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be a nightmare.
As I said earlier, it's just going to cause chaos.
Absolutely. Well, that comes to the end of our podcast today. And thank you everyone who's joined us. As always, it's always been a pleasure. If you ever have a comment or have something you want to add, any comments are welcomed amongst us. As long as they're constructive, even constructive criticisms we take on board. If you're going to get nasty, you will be just ignored, because I don't reply to them, because I'm an epic cunt and I can get into Twitter wars like anybody.
I'm the total thing to say out of this.
And because we're trying to run a podcast on a civic basis, I've got to behave myself.
That's why I'm here.
My man, behave you Irish cat. As always, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm Sean, John, or Yasha, depending on the fuck you're asking.
I'm Chris, hope you have a smashing day.
And as always, I hope you had a happy Easter. To all the Catholics out there, our hearts and sympathies go with you for the passing of your religious leader, who I genuinely do think was a good man.
And I hope Saturday goes nice and peacefully for you too.
Absolutely. Have a lovely